ESPN's Rece Davis, host of ESPN College GameDay in Tuscaloosa with the gang, Saturday for LSU and Alabama. And once again, they'll be on the road with Athens, Georgia, Ole Miss at Georgia. Rece, thanks for joining us. We've been talking about Michigan, but mostly Michigan off the field. And even though J.J. McCarthy's a Heisman candidate, but this really has to do with the sign stealing scandal. And we talked about Connor Stalions resigned or maybe was fired or whatever it is, but he fell on the sword. So does this all go away with Michigan? Everything's good now?
I don't think so, Dan. I mean, you and I have been around this for a long time, and this is how it always goes, right? Now, whether they knew at the upper reaches of the football building that Connor Stalions was doing this, everybody's going to have their own judgment and have conjecture about whether that's true. But this always happens. Whenever you get caught something, there's always some low-level assistant raises his hand. I was acting alone. Nobody knew. We've seen it in basketball. We've seen it in football. I don't think this makes this go away in the least. The real question is, does the Big Ten, implement something in their sportsmanship policy, make Jim sit out for a while? How long is the right amount of time? Who knows? And then beyond that, I think this is something that stays with Michigan the rest of the year.
It feels like what doesn't benefit the Big Ten or Michigan to have him punished this season.
Right.
And hey, Jim, take the month of September off again next year.
Yeah. That is, Dan, that's the thing. Very few people or institutions particularly act against their own best interest. And punishing Harbaugh does act against the Big Ten's interest. What I have found interesting about this is that the other coaches and ADs have apparently in these meetings have been so adamant about Michigan being punished. The reason that surprises me is that typically coaches may be so angry about something, but they're not doing that because while they might not be stealing signs, there's something they don't want you poking around in their business about. And you're inviting people to come scrutinize you when you become that adamant about punishing someone else. So I've been surprised by that. And that's the only reason I think the Big Ten would act now, because otherwise you're 100% right. It's not in the Big Ten's interest to try to punish a team that might well win the national championship.
How do you explain the market correction with Colorado?
Line play, teams catching up a little bit of wear and tear of the season. And I don't want to diminish what they did because they are so much improved from what they were prior to Deion's arrival. He's done a really good job, even if they don't win another game in terms of improvement. But you go back and look and, TCU's not very good. Nebraska's not very good. And USC can't stop anybody. But, I give Colorado credit because in the past, they still would have lost those games too. So I think it's just part of the building process. And we probably thought he was a little farther along than he was capable of being, than anyone was capable of being with the start they got off to.
Talking to Rece Davis, College GameDay will be in Athens next Saturday, Ole Miss at Georgia. The show live from 9 to 12 Eastern. And also, Rece will be hosting the College Football Playoff Ranking Show, which you can catch tomorrow night, 7 Eastern on the Mothership. Who's going to be number one this week, in your opinion?
I think it's going to be Georgia, Dan, because Ohio State certainly last week had the best resume, and they probably still do, but I haven't thought that they were the best team yet. And Georgia, good win over a really good Missouri team. I would suspect that there were a number of people on that committee who thought they were the best team already, but needed something, just needed something to validate it. And maybe that win over Missouri will be enough, combined with Ohio State's struggle against, solid, improving, but certainly not juggernaut Rutgers team. I think we'll put Georgia at number one. But then again, I thought Georgia would be number one last week too, despite Ohio State's better resume.
The fallout at USC, why did it take this long for Lincoln Riley to realize what the problem was?
I think he realized it and just didn't want to whack an assistant coach in the middle of the season, and then it became just an untenable situation. I think Lincoln has to have realized it because they didn't improve at all from last year. Now, they got pressure on the quarterback. They've been up in tackles for loss and sacks. That doesn't really matter. If somebody just lines up and hands the ball to somebody and they just run through you continuously, you don't get a chance to get that many sacks. So they didn't show a lot of tangible improvement. It's keeping them from being a championship contender. And I thought the thing that made it imperative to make the move, and maybe it's misleading because we all know little clips of video can be misleading, but Alex Grinch was on the sideline with the defense during the game Saturday night. He's giving instructions, and at the end, he holds his hand up in the middle for everybody to join him. Hey, let's go get. And they all, I mean, I think they all left him hanging, so much so that I felt awful for him.
Yeah.
But that was like, you know what? They're not with you, and I don't know if that had any impact, or probably he has a larger set of data to show that the players just aren't with him, and they need a new voice. Alex had a good reputation as a defensive coach at one point. And, I think probably it's one of those things. Everybody needs a fresh set of downs. SC needs a new voice. He probably needs a new place.
I know Caleb Williams isn't going to win the Heisman, but he probably showcased his valuable talents even more so this year than last year because he's had to put up these numbers. They have to score 40 at 45. Mm-hmm. But that defense has just let them down. What's your assessment of Williams this year as opposed to last year?
I think that there are areas in which he's improved. I mean, he's got uncanny accuracy. He's obviously an elite athlete. In addition to being fast, he's slippery. Sometimes guys are kind of straight line fast, not quite as slippery. He's both. He's got great size. And, I've thought for a while that, he and Drake May, it sort of depends on your preference and flavors of ice cream, but both are really good athletes. Drake's probably a little more in that Andrew Luck mode in that he's really fast, but not as slippery, but both are great players. And, I think what Caleb has done to keep his teams in games, because it's, both of them are in similar situations. I think their defenses have let them down in terms of being able to compete for championships. So I think we've got a couple of really, really high level quarterbacks at the top of the draft. And I think Caleb is probably one of those guys, Dan, that so many off-platform plays, unscripted plays, in addition to being able to function very well within the confines of an offense. I think he's probably the guy that you go, boy, if we pass on him, we're going to regret it. So I think he's going to be, the number one overall pick. And it's disappointing for him that really even in his first year at Oklahoma, they would come close to a championship, but not quite enough a complete team, not quite a complete enough team around him to win a championship.
Is there an atmosphere that made you nervous on College Game Day?
No, maybe I'm just not a very smart guy from Alabama or something. But it has, nothing has really made me nervous yet. In terms of feeling insecure in a big crowd or feeling overwhelmed by the show that you're trying to deliver in front of a crowd. It's sort of exhilarating. So maybe I need to be a little smarter about that, but not really, not yet.
Is McAfee going to be the villain? Is that his role from now on?
He's just himself, Dan. I've never met anybody like him. He's got such an innate ability to connect with people, and the crowd responds to him in a way that I haven't seen. And in my television career, he just understands how to do it. And my wife's aunt is 88 years old, right? So she's a loyal watcher of the show, first because she's a college football fan and hopefully because she tolerates me. And when Pat first came along, she didn't have any idea who he was. She's like, who is this? Wow, I don't know if I like him. And now I think that she likes him better than she likes me. I mean, she watches every week. She loves him. And, he has an ability to win people over who might doubt, and he's able to connect. And I mean, he's been a fabulous teammate. So I've been happy to have him. But he's not afraid. If he needs to be the villain and it's something he believes, he is not afraid.
Safe travels to Athens. Great to talk to you again, Rece.
All right, Dan. Thanks a lot. All the best to you, my friend.
Rece Davis. He is the host of College Game Day, and they will be in Athens, Georgia. It's Ole Miss at Georgia. Also, the College Football Playoff Rankings show. You can watch that tomorrow night at 7 Eastern. Are we going to have a new team at the top of the rankings? I believe that we will.